Hey, what's up, guys? You're now listening to Devo with Uncle Theo. Today is day 123, and we're going to cover 2 Kings chapter 6 through 8. Last time we left off, we said that we saw Elisha's ministry increasing in breadth, and we said that Elisha received a double portion, and it's seen an effect of that breadth. His power is going all throughout the land, even amongst the Jews and the Gentiles. And we'll see that even more here today. Chapter 6, verse 1 starts off by saying, "Now the sons of the prophets said to Elisha, Behold now, the place before you where you are living is too limited for us. Please let us go to the Jordan, and each of us take from there a beam, and let us make a place there for ourselves where we may live." So he said, "Go." Then one said, "Please be willing to go with your servants." And he answered, "I shall go." So he went with them. And when they came to the Jordan, they cut down trees. But as one was felling a beam, the axe head fell into the water, and he cried out and said, "Alas, my master, for it was borrowed." Then the man of God said, "Where did it fall?" And when he showed him the place, he cut off a stick and threw it in there and made the iron float. He said, "Take it up for yourself." So he put out his hand and took it. And so you see again another miracle performed by Elisha, being able to allow this axe head, in which iron was very expensive, and the prophets and the sons of prophets wouldn't have had the money to afford this, so they had to borrow it. And losing that axe head was a big deal. But you just see the power of Elisha, not only in breadth, but the miraculous nature of it, even in people coming to him to be trained by him. So we move to verse 8, and throughout the rest of the chapter, there's a war going on between the king of Aram and the king of Israel. And Elisha keeps counseling the king of Israel, showing him how to move so that he won't be captured by the king of Aram. And in verse 11, the king of Aram gets very upset because he's saying, "Who among my people keeps telling the king about my plans?" And his servants say to him, "Nobody. It's Elijah the prophet. He's telling the king your moves that you're speaking in your very bedroom." Now the king of Aram wants to take Elisha down, and he finds out where he is, and they tell him, "Behold, he's in Dothan." And so they sent horses and chariots and a great army there, and they came by night and surrounded the city. So Elisha is there. He was up early and he had gone out, and he sees the army and the horses and the chariots circling the city. And his servant says to him, "Master, what are we going to do?" And he answered, he says, "Do not fear, for those who are with us are more than those who are with them." And this is a powerful verse. A lot of us have heard this before. Elisha prays that the Lord, he says, "Oh Lord, I pray, open his eyes that he may see." And this is a beautiful verse, because what happens is the Lord pulls back the veil and the curtains, and his servant is able to see all of the angels full of horses and chariots of fire surrounding Elisha. And this encourages me because it shows how angels are ministering spirits. And this is happening all the time around us, and we don't know about it because we can't see into that realm. And Elisha had the power to, and he was able to give his servant a glimpse of that. And that should encourage us, because the same God with the same host of angels is fighting on our behalf. We don't have to command the angels or deal with them. We just continue to follow according to the word of the Lord, and the Lord will protect us in these ways. And so the people come in, and Elijah prays and asks the Lord to strike the people with blindness, and he does so. And Elisha leads them to another city and brought them right into the king of Israel's hands of Samaria. And so the king says to him, "What should I do? Should I kill him?" And Elijah says, "No, don't kill him. Give him something to eat and drink. Prepare a great feast for them." And after he does that, it says that the bands of the Arameans didn't come again to the land of Israel. So in verse 24, Ben-Hadad comes back on the scene. And you remember Ahab's foolishness and letting them go with the treaty? He comes back and he's ready to go to war against Israel again. So there's a great famine in Samaria, and Ben-Hadad comes and besieges Israel. And remember, that's a military tactic to surround a nation and starve out their resources so nothing can be imported or exported And eventually what happens is when they run out of their resources, they'll come out and surrender. And so that's the tactic that Ben-Hadad is employing. It's really a military strategy of patience. So you just wait your enemy out and you're able to win the battle that way. And it's so bad during this time, the people are engaging in cannibalism and two mothers agree to eat their child. And it's so bad now, it causes the king to tear his clothes. And this is exactly what is stated that will happen in Deuteronomy 28. The king of Israel asked for the head of Elisha in verse 31. He said, "May God do so to me, and more also, if the head of Elisha, the son of Shaphat, remains on him today." And this is interesting why he's being besieged by Ben-Hadad, but he wants to kill Elisha. And so it's hard to figure out his motives here, whether he thinks that Elisha is behind this siege and it's a view of God doing this through Elisha, or he could have thought that Elisha was in cahoots with Aram and behind this attack. But verse 32 says Elijah was sitting in his house and the elders were sitting with him, and the king sent the man from his presence. But before the messenger came to him, he said to the elders, "Do you see how this son of a murderer has sent to take away my head? Look, when the messenger comes, shut the door and hold the door shut against him." And so this famine is bad, which moves us into chapter 7, where Elijah says, "Listen to the word of the Lord. Thus says the Lord, tomorrow about this time, a measure of fine flour will be sold at a shekel, and 2 measures of barley will be sold at a shekel in the gate of Samaria." So what Elijah is saying is the famine is about to end. But one of the king's chief advisors, one of the officers of the king, says, "There's no way that this could happen." And he says, "Yeah, it will happen. You won't benefit from it. You will see it with your own eyes, but you won't eat from it." And this moves into the story of 4 lepers who actually discover that God has fought for their nation and has won the battle for them. So they come to this nothing to lose conclusion. They say, look, if we stay here, if we sit here, we're going to die. If we enter the city, then the famine in the city is going to kill us. They say, let's just go over where the Arameans are, and if they spare us, we'll live, but if they kill us, we'll die, and we were going to die anyway. So they take on this nothing to lose mentality. But what they figure out when they got there, they didn't know this, but the Lord had caused the army of the Arameans to hear a sound of chariots and a sound of horses, and the great sound confused them, and they scattered and they fled. So the 4 lepers come into their camps, and they don't see anybody there. And so they eat and drink out of one of the tents and take all of the silver and gold and clothes. And then they go back into another tent and they say, hold on, wait a minute. We can't keep doing this and benefiting from this without telling our people. And so they go back and tell the king what happens. And obviously the king and the people take proper precautions to make sure it isn't a setup or an ambush. And it isn't. The promise is fulfilled. And verse 16 tells us they fully plunder the Arameans. The people are so excited, they're trampling out, and they trample over the royal official who Elisha said, you'll see it, but you won't eat of it. He dies right there. And the word of the Lord comes true through the prophet here. And that's how chapter 7 ends. It says, and so it happened to him, for the people trampled on him at the gate, and he died. And we close out with chapter 8. Verse 1 says, now Elijah spoke to the woman whose son he had restored to life, saying, arise and go with your household and sojourn wherever you can sojourn, for the Lord is called for a famine, and it will even come on the land for 7 years. So the woman arose and did according to the word of the Lord of the man of God, and she went with her household and sojourned in the land of the Philistines for 7 years. And it's interesting, that same servant Gehazi was the servant that got struck with leprosy because he was trying to take a bribe and money from Naaman from healing him. He providentially appears before the king and is talking about this woman, how Elijah restored his life. And she just randomly pops up. He's like, what? That's her right here. That's who I was talking about. And the king says, very well. In verse 6, he says, I'm going to restore all that is hers and all the produce of the field from the day that she left the land even until now. And you just see that providence of God working here Reminds me of the story of Ruth that we covered. Remember, she just so happened, air quotes, right, to be gleaning in Boaz's field. Well, we know that wasn't a just so happen. The Davidic line was going to be birthed through them. And you just see that over and over throughout scripture. Then in verse 7 and following, Ben-Hadad gets sick. And it was told to him saying, the man of God has come here. So the king said to Hazael, take a gift in your hand and go meet the man of God and inquire whether I'll get better or not. Remember when Elijah was at Mount Horeb saying there's nobody there that seeks you. And he came in a still small voice saying, no, I work behind the scenes. I'm going to raise up Hazael and Jehu and Elisha. Well, these people are coming on the scene now. You see Elijah dominant in the story now. And here is Hazael, and we'll see Jehu very soon. And so what happens here is Hazael comes to Elisha saying, Ben-Hadad is wondering whether he'll get better or not. And Elisha says, tell him he's going to get better, but he's not going to get better. He's going to die. And Elijah isn't being deceptive here. This is basically what's going on. Yeah, he'll get better, but he won't get better because you're going to kill him. And that's what happens in the story. Hazael tells him he's going to get better. But in verse 15, on the following day, he took the cover and dipped it in water and spread it on his face so that he died. And then Hazael became king in his place. So he kills him through suffocation. And even in this story, before this happens, Elijah cries in front of Hazael. And Hazael says, why are you crying? And he says, because I know the evil that you're going to do to my people. He says, you're going to kill young men with the sword, and their little ones you would dash into pieces, and women with child, you're just going to rip up. But it happens. And in verse 16, it says, now in the 5th year of Joram, the son of Ahab, the king of Israel, Jehoshaphat being the king of Judah, Jehoram, the son of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, became king. You see how all of those names are starting to sound familiar and the same? That's the Right conspiracy. The northern kingdom is trying to intermingle with the southern kingdom to confuse it and to stump out the seed of Judah. And we're about to get one of the most wicked women since Jezebel come on the scene. It says in verse 18, when Jehoram became king, he walked in the way of the kings of Israel, just as the house of Ahab had done. For the daughter of Ahab became his wife, and he did evil in the sight of the Lord. However, the Lord was not willing to destroy Judah for the sake of David's servant, since he had promised him to give a lamp to him through his sons always. Think about that. Why does that have to be stated? Because they're trying to destroy Judah through this conspiracy. But the Lord is going to fight against this. And we get the name of that daughter, who is the granddaughter of Omri, in verse 26. Her name is Athaliah. And the chapter ends in verse 28. It says, then he went with Joram, the son of Ahab, to war against Hazael, king of Aram, at Ramoth Gilead. And the Arameans wounded Joram. So King Joram returned to be healed in Jezreel of the wounds of the Arameans, which the Arameans had inflicted on him at Ramoth when he fought against Hazael, the king of Aram. When Ahaziah, the son of Jehoram, king of Judah, went down to see Joram, the son of Ahab, in Jezreel because he was sick. So we haven't talked much about the southern kingdom, but it's picking back up. And you see Joram is aligning himself with Israel, more of the Umrah conspiracy stuff. And so it's getting really wicked. You still have Jezebel on the scene. Now you have Athaliah, Omri's granddaughter, on the scene, who is the daughter of Ahab and Jezebel. And it's about to get very wicked to the point where they're about to try to completely destroy the line of Judah. And I want you all to see the providence of God here and how just like God fought for his people when he raised up Jacob and changed his name to Israel, he's going to fight for his people. Now that they're this big international nation, he's still fighting for them. Even though there's a massive plot to destroy them internally, God is still going to prevail and show that he's the true living God. And this should grow your faith to just show you how much God has been faithful all throughout human history. Don't you ever dare to think that he wouldn't be faithful towards you. You guys have a good day and catch you next time.